Hi, I'm Circe, and welcome back to the second part of Portraits in a Pandemic. Yesterday, when we finished the class, I suggested that you continue to work a little bit off camera on your self-portrait. I did just a little bit, added some more things, and so I wanted to talk to you about them. But you may be thinking, if you did continue on like I did, oh my goodness, I really don't like what I did. I overworked it, or it's too unrelated to make any sense. And right now, my portrait is making me wonder the same thing. But no fear, this is the beauty of these self portraits. You can add and keep working it. There is no mistake. You are creating your special portrait that is all about you. So, some of the things I added since yesterday were we talked about the dandelion, but I thought about it after I left the picture for a little bit. I thought about Germany, and I said yesterday, kind of in jest, but also in some seriousness, I was going to make a cloud representing the rain. But one of the items that are in your portrait is something that you have overcome, like a challenge. And so I thought instead of making the cloud symbolize Germany, I would have that cloud represent my worry. I am a habitual worrier as a military wife and mom, constant deployments and TDYs. I kept the family together, always worried about things like that. And as a teacher, I'm responsible for children, and so I worry about their health and safety. And you get the picture. So one of the challenges I've overcome is being a perpetual worrier, because in the long run, worrying is not a best way to handle things. But so I put my cloud there of worry. But because I am bilingual and I was thinking about Germany, I wrote worry in German. So if I'm going to be showing this to a larger group of people, I may not want my personal business out there. Although now that I'm on internet land, I guess it is out there. So at any rate, the cloud now represents worry. So that left me with, well, what represents Karlsruhe? And so what I decided was to make something that represented the coat of arms for Karlsruhe, which is right here, and you'll see later on. Fidelitas is the slogan that's going to go on there. So other things I added to this since we last were together was what represented my heritage. So I have been doing a lot of ancestry lately, and so I am Swedish and Scottish and British and German and probably a lot of other things if I go back far enough. But I thought those four for right now would be a good thing. Another thing I wanted to say is I started playing a little bit more with how I've overcome worry. And there's a little sun peeking out behind the cloud because that is a positive move and shows overcoming, shows movement. Another thing I added was a cactus for New Mexico. So I changed the sun a little bit and I added a cactus. And so we're just going to play around today a little more with this picture. So if you're like me, you're looking at this going, ugh, it doesn't look very attractive. There's all these things plopped down. And if we continue today, we're going to plop more things in. And so how do we then tie it together? One of the things I like to do when I'm getting down to finishing it off is completely covering the whole paper. This whole paper should be covered with texture, with color, with words, with slogans. It should not have any empty spots because then it doesn't look finished. And so we'll look a little bit about that as we go along today. We'll think about cross-hatching and putting final touches with black Sharpie markers. Sharpies are one of my favorite things to do any sort of artwork with But when you've done your Sharpie, I like to do it at the very end because it does give a finished final look to the piece. So I spent some time last night working for a little bit, and so I added all those things, and I am, like you, probably thinking, how am I going to make this look beautiful? Today we're going to use markers and pencils. Be careful with crayon. If you're going to use crayon, it's hard to put anything over the wax, so I would put the crayon in places where you're either not going to try to cover it with a marker or at the very end on the very top layer. So I am going to look at this cactus now and think, well, it's very, unfinished. So what do cactuses have? Now I'm using little kids markers, pipsqueaks they're actually called, and I'm just putting on the spikes, just in case people didn't recognize this as a cactus. Hopefully now they will. So look at the things that you've already done and see how you can add a different layer. I am going to use highlighters. I'm going to use Sharpies. I'm going to use colored pencils. I'm going to use it all. And so just, again, play with what you've done. Now up here, I have done the German flag with watercolor, but now to make it look more finished, I'm actually going to outline it with different colored permanent markers. This is a Bic marker, I've got Sharpie colored markers, and then I've got these watercolor markers that put a softer touch to them. You'll see what I mean when I say the black Sharpies make it look finished. It's a very nice, crisp, finished line. So just start outlining and detailing what you have. And when you're working on things in your portrait that you haven't done yet, use your watercolor markers or your, these little markers, and then go over them with your final dark Sharpie. So some of the things it says you should think about are a line from a favorite poem or a scripture verse, a favorite animal or your spirit guide, your roles. Now your roles, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but I'm an only child, so I'm a daughter, but I'm also a mother to our 2 children. I'm a wife. I'm the director of the museum. I'm a wannabe artist. I worked for the federal government, so I was a federal worker. So we can start, actually, if you want to, just list them, what you are. You can incorporate that maybe along your dandelion, well, around my dandelion spiral, maybe as little spots on the blouse. Maybe just write them across the top. That's an idea. Maybe with different color marker, write down the roles that we've had. So maybe I'll do that. But whatever you do, once again, have fun. So just start working, little impromptu working, and we'll double back in a little bit. And don't worry, you can't mess it up. So just enjoy. You get the idea. And you'd be surprised how many things, roles you really have. I'm a neighbor, a friend. So just free associate. And you can do it any way you want. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. You can be much more creative. One thing I wanted to say is on one of the pieces I did, I actually drew a charm bracelet on a hand. And then I put all my roles on that charm bracelet. And it was kind of neat to have them so succinctly and neatly attached to a string. So there's no way to do anything wrong, and it gives you an opportunity to be very creative. So when you're finished with that, writing your roles, and you can always go back, then start detailing what you want to have stand out. So I'm working on my dandelion stem right now, because yesterday it kind of just was put in on watercolor. So today we're detailing it. You see the Sharpie adds just a whole different feeling to it. And then if you find that you've, gone off or you're not lined up properly, you can always use a different color to tie it together and then to, add another layer of color to it. So another thing is a favorite book. So how could you put that in? You could just write the word. You could write just part of the title. You could, if the book was called My 100 Million Blessings, and that's way too much to put on the picture, you could just write blessings, and then it becomes kind of a gratitude point. So the book I really like right now and I'm reading is called Simple Abundance, and it's by Sarah Von Bronick. And I have been a big fan of hers since her first book came out, I would say a couple decades ago. And I have bought every book, and they're very nice reading, and they make me think. And so I'm going to write down somewhere part of the title, Abundance. But I also realize I need more simplicity in my life, so I should probably focus on the word simple. So what I might do is literally take part of it, the abundance, because I have a lot of abundance in my life. If you start thinking back on your blessings, most people are aware that they are really pretty lucky in the big scheme of things. So abundance. So I might just write abundance or part of abundance here. It's always bad when you're writing and talking and videoing. So you can do that very kind of 60s, kind of going off the page, but abundance. So you can do that, and you can then go in and fill in the letters again. So abundance. So another thing is, what is an expression you say a lot? Everybody who knows me knows I use the word awesome way too much. It's overdone, but that is something that everybody would know if they ever said, so what do you think about when you think of Circe? Well, she's always saying awesome. So think of a term that you use a lot and just work it in somewhere. You don't have to do the whole thing, but it's almost like your trademark. Like, what are you known for? And then there's another part of this piece that you can say, what do you want people to really know about you? Who are you really? And this is different than your roles. I mean, your roles are your roles, but if somebody were going to look at your picture, what would you want them to know about you? And that can be really personal. That can be anything from I'm a good person, I'm thrifty, I'm loyal, I'm crazy in a good way, I'm a trendsetter, I'm, eccentric, whatever you want people to think about you, put it out there somehow. It could be, if you're very spiritual, it could be a symbol that anybody would recognize, but it defines your spirituality. It kind of gets down to it. So just play around with that. What people would know about you based on what they see in your picture. Now I'm going to just do layers of my hair. I'm just going to add more and more detail now. And once again, if you go off, you're not staying on the paint, that's fine. That's really fine. Because if you decide later on to go in with the black Sharpie, it's almost like you're going to create a cartoon or a pen and ink drawing. That black will fix most problems can be fixed with a black Sharpie, one way or another. So we were saying yesterday the eyes are so important. So really focus on the eyes. You can really put some detail into them. Think about all the books you've read, all the things that you recognize that you really want to put in to make this portrait you. I'm not trying to show you everything or do everything because I don't want you to try to do what I'm doing, because that wouldn't be you. That would be you trying to put something into a piece that's not you, and that's inauthentic. One thing that I am known for is telling people to be their authentic selves. And so that's probably another word I'm going to put into my portrait at some place, authenticity. So I think I will do that. I hope you're having fun when you're doing this and you're not stressing. I'm hoping that this is just something that's making you think outside the box and is giving you a little flashback into your childhood innocence. Only this time there's not a teacher saying, well, what about perspective? You need to look at these lines that are receding. This is just fun. So while we work on that, reflect on all the challenges you've overcome, all the people that have influenced you, all the things that you do so well. And that brings me to somehow work your talents into this portrait. If you're a seamstress. Maybe your background could be a patchwork quilt. Actually, that's an idea. Maybe you could make a whole background of a quilt and then put all your pieces into the different quilt blocks. If you're a woodworker, maybe the saw blades. If you are a person who is known for being a great mediator, a lot of people say, I don't have any talents, but we're not talking about just artistic talents. We're talking about communication. We're talking about being the peacemaker, being the person that people go to when they have questions or they're kind of concerned about things. Are you a really good friend? A lot of times it's hard to find a good friend. So anything that you think of that is a talent, try to encourage and try to put those in, work them in. And of course the things and people we love. You know, who makes us happy to be around? Who is our best friend? And add those things in. What we're going to do when you're all finished, and so I'm going to have to probably turn this off before we finish, is just encourage you, like I've done here, when you're completely done, really think about how are you going to finalize it. We really don't want a whole lot of white blank paper in the background. So how will you make this a finished project? And it'll not look incomplete. So wherever you want to, you can then use a black Sharpie, or if black is not your color, any color Sharpie to really hone in on completion. So I like black because I like the big, thick lines that kind of draw everything together. Now, what I was talking about with cross-hatching is, let's just say you really don't think it looks good to, the way it is. Then why don't you, because it looks too unfinished or it looks too chaotic, you can cross-hatch. You can just go back and forth like this, cross-hatching to bring bring a lot of color in between the different elements. So cross-hatching can be done with big Sharpies, and then if you want to, you could pick another color to go in between that to make it look more complete and more deliberate. So you could pick a color, and I'm just using a marker, a highlighter actually, to do that. So what I could do is I could do that with everything. Just color it in with the highlighter and then cross-hatch it over. Now, that's a big cross-hatch. That's a big Sharpie. You may have something smaller that you want to use because it's easier to do. So then you can just use a smaller one. Or you could do a combination of both. Whatever you do, have fun. You want to go back and add circles? That's fine too. So here, we could do that. We could make more textures. Circles on your red shirt. That one doesn't show up very well. But you could literally do circles. Maybe these circles could represent how many people you have in your family, or, something. You could make a symbolic number of something, or how old you are. If you're 60, put 60 dots. It's a lot of dots, but it's kind of anything you want. And so I'm just doing circles. It adds interesting texture and it is easy to do. You saw my painting coming down at me. I don't know what that means. All of a sudden it leaps off the table. We're going to know that I am not pleasing the circle gods by doing this. But it just adds texture. So if I'm 60 years old, I might want to put 60 dots. So play around with it. There's my New Mexico sun. How can I make that look better? You know, what does the sun have? Different colors, different shapes. I don't know. We'll just play around, play around. So what I would like to do now is turn off the camera and we'll work on it. And then we'll come back when it's all done. And you can see my finished product. And I would love for you to share yours. Maybe in the comments on the Facebook when it pops up on the Facebook. Or maybe on the Podbean webcast itself. But at any rate, think of the things you want to add. And then think of the different layers. Puff paint will add 3 dimensions. Magazine pieces will add a different interest. Just collage and play around. Enjoy. And I hope you've enjoyed this very simple Portraits in a Pandemic workshop. Goodbye.